Welcome to Unraveling Relationships, Emotions, and Desires. I am your host, Dr. Sheila Hodge Mendoza. From the twin jewels of the Caribbean, St. Kitts and Nevis emerges a story of resilience, faith, and extraordinary triumph. Born amidst the vibrant rhythm of Bastia is a woman whose life embodies the power of grace, the strength of community, and the beauty of a purpose-driven journey. She is a distinguished healthcare leader and dedicated community servant from St. Kitts and Nevis. With over 3 decades in nursing, she has risen to Assistant Director of Institutional Nursing Services, earning advanced certificates in pain management and medical leadership internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with profound admiration that I present to you a woman of grace, a healer of hearts, and a true daughter of the Caribbean, Mistress Sandra Lestrade Caines. Her story is not just one of personal triumph, but an invitation to us all to live with purpose, to serve with joy, and to leave behind a legacy that echoes far beyond our years. Sandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Hodge. I hope you don't mind. I'm calling you Dr. Hodge. I'm so professional. I don't remember calling you Sheila for so many years. So I'll just say Dr. Hodge.
Okay, either one is fine with me, okay? So how are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank God for life.
Good.
I'm doing fine.
Good. I'm so thankful that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to meet with me today. Yes.
You're most welcome, my dear.
Good. Okay. So let's start off by focusing on your childhood. Your childhood was marked by profound transitions, from living with family to entering the St. Christopher Nevis Children's Home. So let's start at the beginning before you entered the St. Christopher Nevis Children's Home. Tell me what was your life like before you entered the children's home?
Well, what I can remember as early as anywhere between the age of 4, somewhere around there, my brother and I, we were living at Lozac Road, just between the police station and King Street. And we were living with a lady named Miss Clark. What I was told now that I'm older is that my mom wanted to go overseas because, life was challenging and she wanted to make a better life for us. And Miss Clark was a family friend and that she entrusted us with her, to look after us while she go overseas. And when life get better, she would, come back and get us or send for us. But, in those days, in the 70s and 80s, legal documentation of documents and rights and so was very, tight and hard. So it didn't work out that way that mom came for us on time. So we would have been there at Lozac Road for about 3 years, and then we went to East Street when Miss Clark moved and go to the CHA houses over at East Street. And persons like Ivy Baptiste and Countess, those were persons that would assist, with our upbringing. Then my mom, Miss Clark, got, she was like 94 years old. She didn't want to give us up to anyone because she kept her promise to my mom not to give us to anyone. But, with age, she could no longer care for fundamental basic needs. So she had a family friend in Sadler's, Miss Matthew, Mr. Ebenezer Matthew and his wife. And she sent us there to live with them because they basically adopted us, because Miss Clark was aged now, and we spent 2 years over there, 1978 and 79, so we witnessed some of Hurricane David and Frederick. and after my mom found out that we were over there, she literally came home to get us and took us to St. Martin for 2 years to live with our uncle in St. Martin, which is my mom's half twin. But as I said, in those times, if you don't have legal document to stay in those countries, you basically can't get any schooling. So unfortunately, we had to leave St. Martin and come back home to St. Kitts. But my family is from Dominica. We don't have anybody in St. Kitts. So when my mom came home, one of my uncle was here at that time, and then Miss Agnes Skerritt, she is my godmother, and my mom asked her through my uncle, to help us out while we were here, to get us settled. So Miss Skerritt was on the children's home board at that time. So she was able to, they only had room for one person, one child at the home. And they were only able to take me. My brother had to end up going to the Harris's home on the Mr. Spencer at that time, God bless his soul, because at that time they would not put a boy and a girl to sleep together in the bed. So since they only had one bed available for the girl, they took me, and then my brother went to Harris's. Yeah, so in a nutshell, that was the earliest part before I went to the home.
Well, from what I know, in those days, the Harris's home was a home where boys who got in trouble were placed. So what was that like, knowing your brother was placed in a home with boys?
Well, he wasn't placed there because he was a troublemaker or anything. It's just that we didn't have any family from here. We didn't have any options. There were no other options, person not just gonna take up, a child just like that who they don't know anything about. So the only safekeeping on the government, quote unquote, security for him, housing him, was at the Harris's, not because he was bad or anything like that, but that was the only place they could have housed him at that time until space became available at the children's home. But even before space became available, he eventually transitioned out of the Harris's home.
Okay. And how did you process the separation from your brother and mother at such a young age?
Well, I did not know my mother until I was like, the first time I saw that I can remember then, I was like age 7, and so I was happy, yes, to know that I have a mother of my own, because, even though I might be 7, it's in your mind like, you don't know your mother, you don't know your father, you all you know is your brother, an uncle, and that's about it, So it was, I was very happy, but I really miss my brother because all I knew was him. All my life it was just both of us. We always together, we sleep, together in the same home, come up together all our life, and then he was just abruptly snatched out of my life. So that was very depressing, very, very, very depressing, and even in my life now, I'm older. Whenever we have challenges in my work area where you have to separate siblings from children, that always come back in my mind that children should always have the option to stay within the family as opposed to putting them with total strangers, because I know how I felt when that was inflicted on me.
Yeah, that is traumatic, very traumatic.
Mhm.
So what emotions do you recall feeling when you first arrived at the children's home?
Well, when I arrived there, nurse, as we affectionately know her as Doris Lloyd, God bless her soul, I call her my grandmother. She was so warm and loving and welcoming. I don't know, people usually say because I was such a cute child at that time, had very long, curly hair. And you remember me when I was a child growing up. So I was very beautiful and very manners and, shy. So I guess she just opened me with welcome. Actually, I became Nurse favorite. I wouldn't say, you know what, I'm about the whole world know that I was one of Nurse favorite child. You know, she literally took her own money, sent me to the St. Joseph Roman Catholic Church school, you know, Roman school then, the St. Joseph school. And, you know, she just hooked me under her bosom, you know, and I guess, you know, she just sometimes, you know, your spirit just take persons. And so she just took me as her own, you know. She did everything for me, you know, send me to school, buy the best clothes, everything. Everybody knew, even the children, they knew I was her favorite.
So,
I'm not saying it was fair, but I mean, I guess she just couldn't help it. I don't know why. She just took to me, you know.
so even though you were living in a home, the children's home with a lot of other kids, you were selected by her to go to a private school where you were given the best education possible.
Yes, yes. So actually, I vividly remember going to the Newtown Primary School, which is Tucker Clark now, and just for a short, brief stint, it wasn't consistent. And when we went to Sadler's, um, it wasn't consistent because Miss Matthew and her husband, they had grown in the mountainside. I remember 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, we had to wake up to go up to the ground to pull potatoes and get back down to go to school for 8 o'clock. I remember going to school over at Sanders with a clear plastic bag in my hand with a half a book and half a pencil, you know, and you know, so I remember those life. I mean, those were very humble beginning for me. I grew up rough in those time, and I don't see it as any scar or anything, you know. I can look back and I can relate to other person, and I can appreciate that it's not really how you start, you know, it's how you end. It's no fault of anybody, you know, but that was the best that I could have gotten at that time. So when I went to the children's home, and nurse knew that I did not have proper schooling, you know, in my early primitive age, she decided she's going to send me to a private school because at the age of 7, I was teaching big grown women to read. I was a very good avid reader at age 7. I always remember we used to have that biblical book that used to tell you the story from the beginning to the end. I don't know if you remember that book, you
Yes,
know, about Adam and Eve and
yes,
Noah and that story book. I
yes.
remember I used to be teaching big women, you know, to read from that book. I was, you know, I was an avid reader at that time. So she realized the potential in me, you know, and she sent me to the Roman Catholic school, and Miss Agnes Skerritt also helped her. She bought my uniform, she bought my books, and she bought my bag. So, you know, I was very thankful. I wasn't the only child that went to Roman school. There were Patrick Weeks and Anna Weeks, you know, and other person would have went to the St. Joseph school with me. So I wasn't the only child that were going there at that time.
Okay. So it's good to know that you were given a good opportunity to get a good education, even though
Mhm.
it wasn't the ideal situation. So the
Mhm.
home became your sanctuary, but it was also a place where you had to adapt quickly. Take us inside that experience of living in the home with so many siblings who were not really your biological siblings.
Looking back at it, because it was like challenging first because many of the children realized that I was Nell's favorite child, and they, yeah, that is expected. Children would get jealous, just like even when you have your brothers and sisters and mommy prefer one child over the other, you know, they would get jealous and so. But from a very early age, I think I saw the potential in me. I was very, you know, mannered, and I followed instruction and obeyed, and I was very helpful with house chores. You know, early o'clock, I was plaiting children here, like 10 of them you know, on the weekend, and washing. And when I was 10 years old, I was like already standing up on a stool and stirring like 5 pound of rice, you know, helping to prepare in the kitchen and, you know, things like that. So I learned fast. So I became like a young lady very fast by growing up in the home. It teach me a lot of life skills, you know. So I really, now I looking back, I said, back then it might have been a lot of work for me because, you're supposed to be enjoying childhood and learning your lesson, and the adults supposed to be doing the work and the house chores and preparing meals and combing here and ironing. But I had to be the big sister and take on those things. And I mean, I am thankful that now looking back that I learned those skills because it prepared me for life. I'm not a lazy person. I'm a hardworking, very industrial individual, but still I'm very soft and compassionate and caring for others' need. I'm just a helper. I think that's just my innate ability.
Wow, that's wonderful. So society often labels children, in the children's home with stereotypes. How did you navigate that reality, or did you experience any of that at school or anywhere else in society?
Well, I had a lot of that to, overcome. And persons like Elenita Nathaniel, Sam Nathaniel, we call Uncle Sam, Rosemary, Powell, Elaine Osborne, your mother, I only buried, God bless her soul. These were persons who used to be encouraging me because everywhere I walk in the road, people used to remind me, you remember you're a government child, and tell you things, because I had this soft, long, coolie hair, people would say things like normal children would say to you, think you look good, and so all kind of thing. And just because they're envious, because I mean, I learned very fast. When I went to Roman school and I went to Miss Hodge would have been the headmistress there at that time. God bless her soul. And I would have gone to, my test of standards there at that time and went to the Bastia Junior High School at that time. And my marks was so exceptional that I could have gone in an A. And the decision was that because the time period was so short, they don't think it was right to put me in an A stream as yet because I had missed out so many of the fundamental part of my early childhood of learning. But and the teacher said to me at high school, if Miss Jacobs, I think it might have been, or the other one, I can't remember her name right now, but I think it was Miss Jacob at that time though. And she said to me, you just have to prove to them in 6 weeks. If you do well, we'll take you out of 1B2 and we'll put you down once you prove yourself. And I always remember Miss Farrier was my homeroom teacher, God bless her soul. And she, in 6 weeks' time, I performed so well. And they did not move me. And people like Mr. Tishiro, God bless his soul, Miss James, these are persons who were there for me and encouraging me to get over the stigma and the hardship. And people, they would, Mr. Tishiro used to say, just because she's a children home child, y'all treating her like that. I mean, she's performing like people in 1A1 and 2A1, and it's not fair for y'all to treat her like this. And but I never back down. I just leave it as it is, and I just continued to do well and perform. I was always a top student when I was going to high school and stuff like that. And in spite of what public was saying to me, I didn't let it, deter me. I just hold my head up high, choose my friend wisely. And, surprisingly, I always gravitate to older persons. I didn't really have much young persons as friends, so a lot of time people used to call me an old lady. And, because I always gravitate to the older person. I guess that's where I get a lot of the life teaching skills and knowledge and wisdom. So the stigma was always there, and it was hard and overcoming. And they would say, you're wearing me clothes, you're wearing me shoes. I wear them wherever the clothes came from and the school the shoes came from. I wear them with pride and dignity. It wasn't no fault of mine why I ended up in the orphanage. And those things don't mean anything to me, I just was about to get a good education and get a good life. And I wasn't going to let anybody, stop me and deprive me from that.
That's wonderful. So from an early age, you've learned not to let those negative naysayers affect you.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to children in similar situations today who might feel defined by their circumstances?
Well, I do have persons, children who feel stigmatized and marginalized and rejected by society because of whatever the reason is. And I would say to them, listen, you can be responsible for a person's action. You only can be responsible for yours, how you're going to react to whatever situation, and always choose to do the positive thing. You don't have to listen to them. Sometimes when people breed negativity to you, it's not really a reflection of, it's not a reflection of you at all. That first and foremost, it is just showing you what that individual who is trying to inflict the negativity on you is made up of. So they are really exposing who they are. And that is how I would do like a bit of reverse psychology on them, to help them, so that, because I mean, the stigma and the bullying and the criticizing, and so it is real. But sometimes I tell person, listen, I had a former nurse leader who used to say to me, listen, when person throw lime at you, just take it and turn it in some lemonade, when it's throw sour lime at you, you can make lemonade out of it. So I do some reverse psychology and teach persons like coping skills, how to, because you can't remove it out of society. We don't have a perfect society.
All right, cool. So out of hardship often comes wisdom, and you can definitely say that. You are filled with wisdom. What are some other lessons you have learned from growing up?
Well, fundamentally, God is the center of everything. I could remember back in the home, 5 o'clock every morning, we had to wake up and go through the scriptures. And that is what even helped me to even become such an avid reader and such a good reader, because we had to read the Bible every morning, memorize scripture verses and stuff like that. And nurse always reminded us to always respect yourself and respect others and don't judge and don't discriminate, things like that. You never know why people are in the situation they're in. And life has been good to you, and you must not rob persons of an opportunity for life to be good to them, because sometimes some persons really go through some hard times, and respect every human being. That is honorable, because she always reminds us when the Bible said, how can you say you love Christ who you can't see, but your brothers and your sisters who you see every day, you hate them and you look down on them and you trample on them. So those kind of principles were instilled to me at an early time. And that's why I tell person I can be nothing else but a nurse or caregiver, because of my upbringing. I love to see people happy. I love to see people well. I try to help. If I give my last clothes on my back and I have to do it, nurse used to say, listen, the Lord will provide. If he send the person to you to take your last shirt off your back, he know why, and he will provide a shirt for you. And sometimes he ain't gonna give you one shirt, he gonna give you four. So these are the kind of things that I always look at.
By the way, I remember there was a time when you guys used to have a garden in the children's home. Did you participate in having any garden?
Oh, sure. And then guess what? That gardening, well, I can remember by the time I got there in like 1980, I went to the home. Yeah. And your mother is who actually get me into gardening, because your mom used to come there every day. And she used to encourage us to do gardening. And she used to say, y'all have a gardening competition. And so we used to see whose garden looked the best, whose herbs and thyme and lettuce and sweet pepper and so look the best. And she used to reward us, at that time, your mom used to like to cook a lot of garden pigeon peas and red silk fig, snapper, fish. She loved fish. And once we keep our garden clean and so, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we're looking out for your mom to come down from over the alley, and she come in with her container with food and to share with us, and she said, let me see who can weed up the best from the weed, and then she would reward us and stuff like that, so we all had gardens, and some were growing flowers and some were doing, vegetables and so, but yes, your mom was quite instrumental with the gardening. And she had her own spot in the home where she had her own little garden where she would put okra and run spinach on the fence and stuff like that.
Well, you brought up my mom, so let me transition to my mom, and then we'll go back to another topic. So
Mhm,
I began a series on grief and loss to celebrate the life of my beloved mom, Ayo
mhm,
Berridge, whose birthday was April 13th.
mhm,
So this was a way of my showing remembrance for her, reflecting on her life. This
mhm,
final installment closes the chapter on grief and loss for this series, and my sister, Deborah Thompson,
mhm.
suggested that I select you to be the one to speak about my mom.
Oh my, oh my.
And
Oh
so I
gosh.
agreed. So both of us chose you to help honor the memory of my mom because we know how deeply our mom loved you. She
Mhm,
cherished you as if you were her own. So
mhm.
since you brought up my mom, and I also want to honor my mom at this point in time too, what impact did my mom have on your life?
Oh boy. Next to nurse, your mom was like my second granny. I remember your mom, anytime she comes to the children home, she always used to ask for me first and make sure that whatever she has, if she don't give me all, she's gonna give me peace. So whatever she has, she will share it with me. She would instill things to me like Bible stories and encourage me to go to Sunday school or Sunday time because what is his name? Moses used to have Sunday school in the afternoon at the children's home, and she would encourage me and say, make sure you go to church. So I would leave Catholic church on Sunday morning and then go up to the Moravian church and then come back and then go to Sunday school in the children's home yard with Moses, and Roy. You remember Roy,
Oh, yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she would instill those things in me, and she was also so caring and encouraging to me. And when I come home, she say, "You don't do your homework. Go do your homework." Sometimes she would tell me, "Bring your homework. Let me see what you do." And if I don't write something correctly, she would say, "No, rub out that. The teacher even understand that. Fix that properly." But she didn't have a problem with me reading because she realized I could have read. But the biblical foundation, she helped to reinforce what nurse was doing. And even after I grew up and become a big, grown woman, have my own family, and so me and Mother Berridge, I call her Mother Berridge because I respect her like that. The mothers of the church, I always call them Mother Delaney, Mother Berridge, and stuff like that. And I still stay connected with her. We had what we call the teenagers, where you have senior citizens from different churches. I would meet with them once every month, and we'll go sightseeing, sometimes to the beach, sit under the tamarind tree. Meet with them at the church, have fellowship with them, have lunch with them. And I would pick up Mother Berridge once a month, for years now, we've been doing that, until her passing. And she always reminded me when I was at the children home, and she always, even after I get big, she would still encourage me in the Lord. And what I admire about your mom, boy, she knew the Bible. There's no Bible quiz or anything, any question. Even the teenagers, I would test them on some quiz, and so when we meet, and Mother Berry, I used to say, Mother Berry, don't answer yet. If nobody else can answer, then you could answer because she knows almost literally everything. You can't do in Mother Berridge with a Bible quiz, and that is what I admire about her. I say, I want to learn the Bible and be able to answer. Just like how the Bible says we must always have a word in season. And so she was just always on point and sharp, and she prepare you holistically. She wasn't like all, heavenly bound. She's not earthly good. She balanced it out. She talk about your physical life, your family, God, teach you a lot lot of skills and stuff. So I really, really appreciated Mother Berry. Sometimes she go to teenagers and she would say to the other older senior citizen that listen, she almost became my daughter-in-law, things like that, I mean, she was such a loving lady. And even down to, just before she died in her last time, and so she was still so coherent that she still remembered me. I go and I would say, Mother Virgin, home, and she said, yes, Sandra, for you and home, just so.
Yes.
Boy, she used to light up my life. Honestly, I
You
really,
lit up her life too. I know for a fact she loved all the children in the children's home, but you were her favorite.
I know.
Why do you think she became so attached to you?
I think it's just the nature of your mom, because I think she knew that I didn't really grow up with a mother and father, and she just loved taking that opportunity, and she saw the potential in me, and that was one of the reasons why she came to the children home, because she know a lot of us might not have had our mother or our parents there with us, and she did the best that she could in, contributing in whatever way to help to mold us and shape us. And she realized I was not rude and disrespectful, and she always tell me how, proud she was of me, and so I think she really used the opportunity to model, just like as the Bible said, the orphans, those are who, if you are called yourself a child of God, you're supposed to look out for. So she really emulated and walked the talk. She didn't just talk it. She really put herself out and put her words into action.
I don't know if you know that her mom died when she was a baby. Someone apologized to her later on in life for killing my mom. She said someone on the dying bed apologized to her. So
Mhm.
apparently, my mom knew what it was like to grow up without a mom and to feel motherless. And so she always felt attached, very attached to people who didn't have the opportunity to grow up with their parents.
Mhm.
And as you can say, she definitely saw your potential and she wanted to make sure you realize your full potential. You said something else that was funny to me. You said she would look at your homework.
Yeah. She used to tell me, bring your book, let me see, because I mean, she was a lady of action. You can say one thing, because she know children up to tricks. You could say, yes, I don't do my homework, and it's not true. So you literally had to bring the evidence to her and show her,
That is funny because my mom never once asked me to see my homework. She just expected me to get it done.
Oh. Well, I guess you had your other siblings there with you, or other
Uh,
person you could tap into.
yeah, she expected it to be done and it was done. Like some people would say,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was interesting. Okay,
Yeah, she used, I remember she used to do that, honestly.
another
But
thing
when you call her name, I just, reflect she was something else.
you mentioned about her knowing the Bible. Yes, she was able to recite numerous chapters inside out. And one time I asked her, how did you get to learn the Bible, memorize so much of the Bible? And she said, on her job, every break, she would go and read the Bible. She took a testament with her to work. And
Mhm.
every day she would memorize a verse on her job.
Mhm.
So that is how she was able to memorize so much Bible verses. She used her break to memorize the Bible verses.
And your mom was the one, I would have read it, I remember growing up as a child, but that story when when you had to cut the child, it was about to cut the child in two.
Yes.
She's the one that one day sat down and told me that story, and she said, "You think it's a joke? It's true. Look at the Bible and read it up." And it just came back and reflected on me, with Solomon, I said, boy, but the buried there isn't a story that you don't know about the Bible, eh?
Correct. Correct. She knew the
You
Bible
know?
inside out. And
Yeah.
and I can tell you that her bond with you lasted until the day she passed. She,
Mhm.
you were always in her heart, and I really appreciate how you looked out after her during her last days in life.
Yeah. I mean, that's the least I could have done. I even not just your mom, but any older person, I always have that soft spot in my heart for anybody. I think persons supposed to have their last life with in dignity, and whatever I can do, because they once sacrificed and did things for me too. So it's the least that I can do, and I stayed connected with her because after she couldn't come to teenagers, whatever I had, I would still send for her, or to let her know that we still appreciate her. And sometimes I used to go there at the home and to Debbie's home and go to see how she's doing, and if she comes to the hospital, I would go and look for her and stuff like that.
Can you tell us what teenagers is, say for the audience who would not know what
Yeah,
teenagers?
so I don't call them teenagers because we know they're not in their teen. So I just put on a K and say keen ages. They are very, precious keen people to us, because I remember when we go driving through the land or sightseeing around, I would say to them, listen, I have to let you all see the development, because you guys would have sacrificed and make time so better for us now. So I want you all to enjoy some of the fruits from your labor, So persons always say, well, about teenagers. I say yes, because I don't want to call them old. Old is for things. And I just wanted to put a little zest to it. So I said teenagers. Well,
Love the term.
it's not just me, Sister Delia Simmons. She was the basically one of the founders. She started it, and with Mary Caines, and then after they, left, I just took up the mantle automatically. I used to assist, and then to Sister Kendra, who is in charge of the women's ministry called Teenager, is part of the women's ministry at the Antioch Baptist Church, and I just basically coordinate through Sister Kendra.
Cool. Okay. Sandra, your story gives hope. How can society better support children who are in the homes today, living away from their biological parents?
Well, number one, persons who have the authority to make laws, to implement initiative to protect the right of children, they are the one that should be in the forefront, advocating, because let me tell you, however we allow our society to go now, we'll bear the fruits later. So if we want to have stronger societies, we have to start from very early primitive time in children's life to make sure they are loved and secure, because person don't just become, carers when they're adults. These things have to be nurtured into them. And how can they be caring and loving husband and wife in the future when they have had such a bad past, with so much challenges? So if we create that safe environment, if we advocate that, the children should go to their family members, stay within the family before you send them elsewhere, because sometimes you take them out to the family. Yes, they can be abused by family members, but sometimes you take them out of the family and they're still abused by persons who are not, their birth relatives, but we are to create an environment of safety and, as much as possible to reduce exploitation, of our children. They're going to be our future leaders. So how we invest in them now from early preschool age, it's going to determine the way our future is going to be. I mean, if we do the things that are correctly now, that are correct now, it would reduce the future challenges of having stronger society. And I know a person will say, listen, you speaking like you come from Mars or somewhere, because these are the end time and life gonna get harder. But the word of God stands. It said the gate of hell cannot prevail against you. And the methodologies in life will change, but the principles of life would never change, regardless of the generation. So we are not to throw up our hands and give up on the principles, of protecting each other and loving each other, providing a nurturing environment. A lot of things that we are seeing in society is because the adults a lot of them have laid back their morals and their principles to be friends, with their children, and that is why a lot of the ills are happening today, because we when you keep your tongue silent and you don't stand up and speak for those who can't speak for themselves, something is wrong and you encourage it, or you enable it, you're just as bad as the offender and you will be part of the repercussion of the fruits. We just need to be cognizant of what we are doing in the lives of children. It might not show now, but later in life, it's going to spill over into their life and into society.
Oh, words well said. So, Sandra, if you could change one thing about how children's home operate or how they are perceived, what would it be?
Well, the stigma. Persons like to say, oh, you are the country's child, you belongs to the government and things like that, and nothing is perfect in life. Some of the children that goes to the children home, I mean, all of them, it's no fault of theirs. Children can be responsible for children, it's no fault why they end up there, but inflicting the stigma and the discrimination and the labeling on them, it doesn't help the situation. It doesn't help it at all, bullying and stuff like that. These persons, they have, self-actualization and self-esteem that they have to concentrate on. And when we inflict these things on them, demarginalize them and stuff like that, it only creates more ill for society. And we count it a blessing, In some sense, I would say count it a blessing when you grow up with your mother and your father, because sometimes some persons grow up with their mother and father, brothers and sisters, and they don't come out as good, quote, for want of a better word, as person who are raising the children's home, because you might get all the nice shoes and name brand clothes and all that from being in your biological home, and you're just not a people's person. You're anti-socialist, you had to get on with, you're ill-mannered. You might be very intelligent and come out a good home and very disrespectful, so I mean, whatever life throws at us, we must use the opportunity to help persons. Help them. If you really can't help, see how you can use whatever you have to reach out and refer to where they can be helped. So the stigma is what really causes a lot of persons to don't want their children to go in the children's home, or their children don't want to be in the home because they will feel rejected, that the mother and the father don't want them. But I always say to children, listen, everybody don't have it, well made, and not because you're not raised by your mother and your father, that doesn't mean you can achieve your full potential. I would have achieved my full potential, no fault of my parents, I don't blame them. I mean, initially, yes, you will have some reserved feelings, but as you mature in life and you realize, hey, a lot of people during the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, they had a lot of hard time, and some tough decision had to be made. And I mean, do you hold that a grudge against them or hatred against them for what was inflicted. No, I don't. I don't. Who am I to do that? Because I never know what I would do in life and whose forgiveness or what path I am gonna need to take. You know, we are not a forgiving society sometimes. We don't let people forget where they come from. You know, we keep reminding them where they come from. Even now, I'm big old like this. You know, I'm 53 years old almost, and person will tell me, you come out the children home. I was proud to come out the children home. That don't mean anything to me. I mean, you said
Right.
it, you know, it doesn't make me less of anybody.
That's
It was
right.
indeed an honor growing up in the children's home because, hey, I might grow up with my mother and my father, and I might not have been as so productive as I am as a child of God. I mean, most of all, that is what I want to be known as a humble servant of the Lord, doing His will here on earth.
And you're really doing a great job. So what message would you share with caregivers or policymakers about the emotional needs of children without parents, their biological parents?
Well, the message that I will send, and I'm glad you said policies, because you know when you're raising children who don't have their biological parents, and so it has to be structured. It has to be policy driven. It has to be professional and formal, because you don't want everybody to come with their ad hoc ideas, you know, of going and doing things. You want proper structured in place that they would look at the child as a holistic being, you know, to care for all the various facets of their lives, you know. So more structured in place, you know, I would always advocate for that. And listen, everything can be the government. Everything cannot be the government. It takes a village to raise a child, you know, and you don't do things to look for something in return. You are saying that when I help this child, you never know, it's going to be the next prime minister, the next teacher, the next fisherman, the next horticulturalist, you know. You never know what they're going to be, and they're going to help to mold this society. For it's on a ripple effect. It's going to mold this society for the future generation to come, and your hand would have been part of it, you know. So it's very important that we have proper structures and policies in place to protect, but not just to protect and govern us and guide us, but also to, in those policies, to have what you call your M&Es, your monitoring and your evaluation systems, because a lot of time persons develop policies and so on, they don't monitor and evaluate to make sure that they're getting the full efficacy out of these policies, and so on, they're really getting what they're supposed to be getting, you know. Things fall through the crack, people fall through systems, and you know, so it has to be an all holistic approach, you know. And as I said, don't lean on the government to do everything. We have a responsibility to nurture our children if we want to have a healthier society.
It's time for a break, Sandra. Join us for part 2 of the interesting conversation with Sandra Lestrade Caines.